Are the Montreal Canadiens about to make a move that could completely reshape their identity? Or are they wasting precious assets chasing a player who doesn't even feel their most glaring need? That's the question burning through the hockey world right now as reports emerge that Quinn Hughes has his eyes locked on Vancouver Canucks forward Kiefer Sherwood, a gritty, goal-scoring winger who's having a career year at the absolute perfect time for his bank account. Welcome back to the channel, where we dissect the biggest stories in hockey with the intensity they deserve. Today, we're diving deep into what could be one of the most intriguing storylines as we march toward the trade deadline. 3 months might seem like an eternity in the NHL calendar, but make no mistake, the wheels are already turning. The phone lines are already buzzing, and general managers are already positioning themselves for what promises to be an absolutely chaotic deadline day. Let's set the stage here. Kiefer Sherwood is a 30-year-old American winger who stands 6 feet tall, shoots right, and is currently in the final year of a contract that pays him just $1.5 million. But here's where it gets absolutely fascinating from a cap management perspective. Due to the structure of his deal with signing bonuses already paid out, any team acquiring him would only be on the hook for $775,000 for the 2025-2026 season if they choose to extend him before he hits unrestricted free agency this summer. Read that again. $775,000 for a player who already has 12 goals this season and brings the kind of sandpaper game that every contending team craves come playoff time. According to insider David Pagnotta, who dropped this bombshell on the Sekiers and Price podcast, Sherwood checks 3 critical boxes that make him one of the most attractive rental options on the market. He scores goals, he plays with an edge that can swing momentum in tight games, and his contract is an absolute steal in today's inflated salary cap environment. Pagnotta revealed that multiple teams have already reached out to Vancouver to gauge the Canucks' willingness to move Sherwood. The Dallas Stars, Colorado Avalanche, Minnesota Wild, and New Jersey Devils are all reportedly in the mix. And yes, the Montreal Canadiens have joined that conversation. The Montreal Canadiens, even though they're not leading their division, are another club keeping an eye on players who would fit Kiefer Sherwood's profile, Pagnotta stated. Now, let's pump the brakes for a second and inject some cold, hard reality into the situation. The Canadiens are poorly focused on acquiring players on expiring contracts, rentals who can provide immediate impact without long-term commitment. That strategy makes sense for a team still trying to figure out exactly what it is and where it's headed. But here's where the logic starts to break down. Kiefer Sherwood doesn't play center. He's a winger. And unless something has fundamentally changed in Montreal's organizational philosophy since yesterday, their most pressing need remains down the middle of the ice. They need centers who can win face-offs, drive play at 5-on-5, and provide the kind of two-way reliability that championship teams are built upon. So why are the Canadiens sniffing around Sherwood? Because Quinn Hughes understands something that casual fans often miss. You don't just build a roster based on positional need. You build it based on value, opportunity, and the kind of intangible qualities that don't show up on a stat sheet, but make all the difference when the games matter most. Sherwood brings energy. He brings physicality. He brings a willingness to go to the dirty areas and make life miserable for opposing defensemen. Those qualities could absolutely transform a third line in Montreal, giving them a dimension they currently lack. The Canadiens have skill. They have speed. What they don't always have is that relentless, in-your-face intensity that wears down opponents over the course of a 7-game series. Let's talk dollars and cents, because in the modern NHL, every transaction is a complex financial puzzle. Sherwood's current cap hit is negligible, which means Montreal could absorb it without making any corresponding moves. That's huge, but the real calculation involves what happens next summer. According to reports, Sherwood isn't currently in extension talks with Vancouver. That's not surprising. He's having a career year. He's about to turn 31. And this is likely his last chance to cash in on a significant multi-year deal. Pagnotta suggests Sherwood could be looking at contracts starting at $4 million per season when he hits the open market. Here's where it gets interesting. Teams that really want Sherwood don't need to wait until the March deadline to make a move. His contract structure is so favorable that an acquiring team could theoretically negotiate an extension immediately locking him in before the bidding war begins. That's a massive advantage for a team like Montreal, if they truly believe he's a fit. But, and this is a significant but, what's the cost? The going rate for a productive rental winger with Sherwood's profile is likely a first-round pick, possibly with additional pieces attached depending on how the bidding escalates. Is Quinn Hughes really willing to part with a first-rounder for a 30-year-old winger who wouldn't necessarily crack the top 6? For a player who addresses a want rather than a need? That's where the skepticism creeps in. The Canadiens are not one player away from contention. They're a young team still figuring out its identity, still developing its core, still trying to establish the kind of winning culture that sustains success over multiple seasons. Trading a first-round pick, a potential building block for the future, for a rental winger who might provide a short-term boost but doesn't fundamentally change the trajectory of the franchise, that's a tough sell. Of course, the Sherwood situation is just one piece of a much larger puzzle in Vancouver. The Canucks are facing some massive decisions over the next 18 months, and the biggest one involves their captain and franchise cornerstone, Quinn Hughes. Hughes is 19 months away from unrestricted free agency, and while there's no indication he wants out of Vancouver, the clock is ticking on the Canucks' ability to control his future. If Vancouver decides they can or won't extend Hughes, they'll face an impossible choice: trade one of the best defensemen in hockey and recoup maximum value, or risk losing him for nothing when he walks as a free agent. The rumor mill is already churning. The New Jersey Devils have been linked to Hughes, which makes sense given his brother Jack plays there, and the Devils are trying to build a championship contender. But Pagnotta also mentioned the Detroit Red Wings as a potential suitor, and that's where things could get really spicy. Detroit has the assets, the cap space, and the desperation to make a franchise-altering move. If Quinn Hughes becomes available, expect Steve Yzerman to be all over it. But that's a story for another day. The point is, Vancouver is entering a period of significant transition, and players like Sherwood, valuable, productive, but ultimately expendable, are going to be shopped aggressively as the Canucks try to maximize their return before assets walk out the door. Let's zoom back to Montreal and think about this from Quinn Hughes' perspective. He's building something in Montreal. The foundation is young and promising. Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki, Uri Slavkovsky, who, by the way, is not a center despite what some people might suggest, Lane Hudson, and a pipeline of prospects that's among the deepest in the league. Hughes has been patient. He's resisted the temptation to make win-now moves that mortgage the future. He's accumulated draft picks, developed prospects, and waited for the right opportunities to strike. So why would he suddenly pivot and trade a first-rounder for Kiefer Sherwood? The answer might be simpler than we think. Because the price is right and the opportunity is unique. If Hughes can acquire Sherwood for less than a first, say, a second-round pick and a mid-level prospect, that changes the calculation entirely. Suddenly, you're adding a proven NHL player with desirable qualities without sacrificing a premium asset. That's smart business. There's also the cultural element to consider. The Canadiens are trying to establish an identity. They want to be hard to play against. They want to be a team that opponents dread facing because they know they're going to get hit, they're going to get pressured, they're going to have to earn every inch of ice. Sherwood embodies that philosophy. Bringing him in sends a message to the locker room. This is what we value. This is how we want to play. Here's where it gets complicated. Montreal isn't operating in a vacuum. The Stars, Avalanche, Wild, and Devils are all reportedly interested, and each of those teams has different motivations and different levels of urgency. Dallas is trying to get back to the Stanley Cup final after falling short last season. They have the pieces, they have the depth, but they could use another versatile forward who can play up and down the lineup. Colorado is always in win-now mode with Nathan MacKinnon and Cale Makar in their primes. Minnesota is trying to maximize their window before their cap situation becomes untenable. New Jersey is building something special and wants to add complementary pieces around their young stars. Every one of those teams can make a compelling case to Vancouver. Every one of those teams can outbid Montreal if they choose to. So if Quinn Hughes really wants Sherwood, he's going to have to be aggressive. He's going to have to make Vancouver an offer they can't refuse. And that brings us back to the central question. Is Kiefer Sherwood worth that level of commitment? The honest answer? Probably not. Sherwood is a good player having a great year. He's the kind of guy who makes your third line dangerous and your fourth line respectable. But he's not a difference maker. He's not the piece that transforms a bubble team into a contender. And for a Canadiens team that's still in the middle stages of a rebuild, trading premium assets for marginal upgrades doesn't make strategic sense. One of the most intriguing aspects of this situation is the timeline. We're 3 months away from the trade deadline, which in NHL terms is an eternity. A lot can change between now and March. Players can get hot. Players can get injured. Teams can surge up the standings or collapse out of playoff contention. The market can shift dramatically based on factors nobody can predict right now. Pagnotta made an interesting point. Teams that really want Sherwood don't need to wait until the deadline because his contract is so favorable. That suggests we could see movement sooner rather than later. Vancouver might prefer to move him early, get their return, and move on rather than risk injury or a cold streak that tanks his value. For Montreal, acting early could be advantageous if it means avoiding a bidding war. But it also means committing to a direction before they have complete information about where they stand. The Canadiens are currently hovering around .500, neither clearly in nor clearly out of playoff contention. Do they really want to make a move that signals they're going for it, when they might be better served staying the course and continuing to develop their young players? There's also the Olympic break to consider. Many teams prefer to wait until after the break to make significant moves, using that pause as a natural dividing line in the season. But if Sherwood is as coveted as reports suggest, waiting might mean losing out to a more aggressive competitor. Let's step back and look at the forest instead of the trees. The Kiefer Sherwood situation is emblematic of a larger trend in the NHL. The increasing value placed on versatile, affordable players who can contribute in multiple ways. In an era where star salaries are skyrocketing and the salary cap is constraining team-building options, guys like Sherwood, who provide legitimate value at a fraction of the cost, become incredibly attractive. For Montreal, this is about more than just one player. It's about establishing a pattern of smart, opportunistic moves that gradually improve the roster without sacrificing long-term flexibility. If Hughes can consistently identify and acquire players like Sherwood, guys who are undervalued or available at the right time, the Canadiens will accelerate their rebuild without taking unnecessary risks. But there's a fine line between opportunistic and desperate, between smart asset management and chasing shiny objects. Kent Hughes has earned the benefit of the doubt with his moves so far. Decision is scrutinized. Every trade is analyzed. Every acquisition is judged against the standard of whether it brings Montreal closer to championship contention. Kiefer Sherwood might be a nice player. He might even be a good fit in Montreal's bottom six. But is he the right move at the right time for the right price? That's the question Hughes needs to answer before he picks up the phone and makes Vancouver an offer. After breaking down all the angles, all the implications, all the strategic considerations, here's the bottom line. The Montreal Canadiens should be interested in Kiefer Sherwood, but they shouldn't be aggressive pursuers. If the price drops to something reasonable, a second-round pick, a B-level prospect, something in that range, then absolutely pull the trigger. Sherwood would add a dimension Montreal lacks, and at that price, the risk is minimal. But if Vancouver is demanding a first-rounder or a premium prospect, Hughes needs to walk away. The Canadiens are not in a position to pay premium prices for complementary players. The reality is that Montreal has bigger fish to fry. They need to figure out their center depth. They need to continue developing their young defensemen. They need to determine whether Sam Montembeault is a legitimate starting goaltender or if they need to explore other options. Kiefer Sherwood, as appealing as he might be, is a luxury, not a necessity. That doesn't mean Hughes should ignore the opportunity entirely. It means he should be patient, disciplined, and willing to walk away if the price isn't right. The worst thing Montreal could do is get caught up in a bidding war and overpay for a player who doesn't fundamentally change their trajectory. As we head into what promises to be a fascinating few months leading up to the trade deadline, the Kiefer Sherwood situation is going to be one to watch. It's a perfect case study in modern NHL team building. A productive player on an expiring contract, multiple teams interested, and a seller who needs to maximize return before the asset walks away. For Montreal, this is a test of Kent Hughes' discipline and vision. Does he stick to the plan and continue building for the future? Or does he make a move that signals the Canadiens are ready to compete now? The answer to that question will tell us a lot about where this franchise is headed. One thing's for certain, the next 3 months are going to be wild. Buckle up, hockey fans. Trade season is about to get real. Before we wrap up, I want to hear from you. Do you think the Canadiens should go after Kiefer Sherwood? What would you be willing to give up to get him? And more broadly, do you think Montreal should be buyers, sellers, or stand pat at the deadline? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one and love hearing different perspectives on these situations. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the Sherwood situation and want more content like this breaking down the biggest stories in hockey, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support means everything and helps us continue bringing you the most comprehensive hockey analysis on the platform. Until next time, this has been your source for no-nonsense hockey coverage. Stay passionate, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next one.